Authority meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to this evening's agenda? Hearing none, we'd be looking for a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Mueller and a second by Commissioner Wooten to approve this evening's agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Moving on, the first item on 3.1 is the approval of the September 24th, 2024 HRA Board meeting minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the September 24th, 2024 HRA Board meeting minutes. We have a motion by Commissioner Wooten and a second by Commissioner Issei to approve the September 24th, 2024 HRA Board meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to organizational business, item 4.1 is a public hearing, but we're going to start with a staff report on the corrected 2024-2025 CDBG Annual Action Plan and Budget. May we have the staff report?
Thank you, HRA Commissioners. So tonight is an item that will look familiar. This is the annual action plan for the 2024-2025 CDBG allocation. And you originally saw this back in March, on March 26th, at which point you recommended approval of the plan by the City Council on April 15th. That all took place. We then received our allocation on May 7th, and it was a higher amount than what we had estimated. And a month later, HUD notified us that we would need to make adjustments to our plan to account for that increase. And so that is what you're seeing tonight. This is a correction to that plan that you saw back in March. So familiar slides, Bloomington is one of the few entitlement communities within Hennepin County, meaning we get our CDBG directly from HUD and get to administer the usage of those funds. We are still part of the county consortium, and we work with the county on the consolidated planning process. So we're currently in the 2020 to 2024 consolidated plan for usage of CDBG, and that's what this annual action plan falls into. Eligible activities are those that serve low and moderate income households, and you'll see that the activities tonight are part of that. So the timeline I went through, the previous timeline for how we got here tonight, we ran a renewed public comment period from August 30th to October 2nd. We did not receive any comments on the corrections. So tonight we're holding a public hearing, and that's to ensure that we have 2 public hearings, which is the requirement for citizen participation plan. Typically, we do one with the City Council and one with Hennepin County, but since they've already done their public hearing, we brought it to the HRA as a public hearing. So after tonight, if you recommend approval, it will go to the City Council next Monday for final approval and a public hearing, and then we'll quickly submit that to HUD to get our final approval, at which point they'll give us the actual funding and we can start using those funds. So the changes that took place, we had an increase from the estimated, we were estimating around $444,000 in entitlement, and that was actually higher, so we're going to receive $475,000. But the big change that had to take place in the plan was we had previously identified CDBG funds that were received but not yet expended, but those received funds were allocated to specific activities. So by identifying them again in the plan, it was confusing. It was as if we were double allocating those funds. So we were instructed by our contact at HUD to not re-identify those prior year funds, but to follow the plan that those funds were originally allocated under. So if you saw the annual action plan in its corrected form, it appears that we have less funding to work with. It's actually the same. It's just that we'll be spending those prior year funds as they were originally allocated. So this is the budget now, the corrected budget that only includes allocation received for this program year and the estimated program income that we'll receive from payoffs from previous loans and activities that generate program income. And so the amounts that have changed, there's been an increase to the allocation for homeowner rehabilitation assistance, and that's the amount that was the difference between the estimated allocation and the actual received allocation. And then the other activities have remained the same insofar as we have the previous allocations from the prior years that are still existing. And I also wanted to bring forward this from the 2023 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, the CAPER, which we do every year. So this is how funding was expended in the previous program year. You can see it's clear that we spend a lot more than we receive in a year, so almost $1 million just for our rehab program. And so that makes it clear we're spending funding that we've received in prior years as well as our program income that comes in. So I think that just illustrates why we maybe would have identified those funds in our plans historically. So the next steps would be to hold a public hearing and then consider the suggested motion, and I can take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing no questions, we'd be starting with looking for a motion to open up the public hearing on corrected 2024-25 CDBG Annual Action Plan and Budget. We have a motion by Commissioner Wooten to open the public hearing, and we have a second by Commissioner Doblinger. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. The public hearing is now open. If there is anybody here to speak on item 4.1, they can approach. Is there anyone on the phone this evening? Okay. Seeing no one coming forward and no one on the phone, we could go ahead and close. So we'd be looking for a motion to close the public hearing on corrected 2024-25 CDBG Annual Action Plan and Budget.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Mueller and a second by Commissioner Wooten to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0 to close the public hearing. Moving forward, I just want to open it up to the board if there's any other questions or anything before we move on to the motion. Okay, now we'll be looking for a motion to recommend approval by City Council of corrected 2024-2025 CDBG Annual Action Plan and Budget for submission and authorizing related actions. We have a motion by Commissioner Wooten and a second by Commissioner Doblinger to recommend approval by City Council of corrected 2024-2025 CDBG Annual Action Plan and Budget for submission and authorizing related actions. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to item 4.2, it's the contract for HRA Bond Counsel Services. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. This is a pretty short report. This is a 3-year contract that's held by the city, the port, and the HRA, who all use Kennedy and Graven for bond counsel services. So this is the first of 2 optional 1-year extensions, and this will be going to the HRA, the port, and the City Council for approval, and it is before you tonight to consider approving.
Are there any questions? Seeing no questions, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the professional services agreement extension for the HRA's bond counsel services with Kennedy and Graven.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Carter and a second by Commissioner Issei to approve the professional services agreement extension for the HRA's bond counsel services with Kennedy and Graven. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to item 4.3, 9030 Park Avenue South Purchase Agreement and Development Contract. May we have the staff report?
Yes. Good evening again, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Sarah. I'll be going through this presentation this evening. So just some background. I know you all have seen this project a few times and had a pretty recent discussion about it, but just a quick reminder, the site was purchased back in 2020. The goal was to provide affordable home ownership opportunities. It was split into two for 2 single-family homes with an attached ADU. It's an exciting project because while ADUs are allowed in Bloomington, we don't have too many of them in the city. So this will be an innovative, fun, unique project. We've partnered with 2 great partners. One is Homes Within Reach, who is serving as the developer, and the mission, and Habitat for Humanity, who is serving as a general contractor. You can see both have missions of providing affordable housing. A little bit of information about the site. It's in East Bloomington. It is in a neighborhood of primarily single-family homes with some duplexes as well. It's a small site, but in a great location. And then you've seen this before, but this is the site plan. You can see the 2 homes, 2 single-family homes with detached garages and an ADU. The ADUs will match the single-family home in terms of style and design. They'll be accessible from the driveways, and there is a tree on the property that is being preserved. And then here you can just see again, you've seen these before, but these are just some pictures of what the proposed residences will look like. 4 bedrooms and 2 stories. And this is the second of the 2. And then you can see here a listing of the project costs. So as is typical with projects like this, the construction costs and the land acquisition are by far the largest. This is per unit, so this is times 2 would be the total cost. So you can see here it's for a single-family home with an ADU, the development cost is over $600,000, and you can see here the proposed funding sources as well. There's a grant in this project from Minnesota Housing. Again, per unit, it's $130,000, and then the request before you tonight is the funding from the City of Bloomington HRA, which is a land write-down and some additional cash assistance of $100,000. And this is just a breakdown of that financial request. Again, it's $112,500 land write-down for each part of the property, and then up to $100,000 in additional subsidy, with a total per unit of $212,500. And the goal behind the subsidy is to keep these projects affordable. They are being sold to a land trust, so presumably these would go to, the land trust would be renewed with every sale, and so you would be keeping these affordable in perpetuity, essentially. And the affordability range is the 60% area median income, which is quite deep affordability for a single-family home. Also, part of the reason for the request before you tonight is because the Minnesota Housing Grant does have a deadline, and that deadline is fast approaching. It's by the end of the year. And so while we are still continuing to explore opportunities to fund the gap, we've applied for some other additional sources and are still trying to be creative in that space. There is a possibility that we would need to move forward without any additional funds. And so the question before you tonight is if the HRA would be willing to fund the gap as it is today. And finally, that comes to next steps, which is to continue working on any opportunities to decrease the gap. It would be structured as an up to additional amount, the $100,000. And then if the board would like to motion to approve that, the motion is before you on the slide here tonight. We also have representatives from Habitat for Humanity, and I believe we have someone from Homes Within Reach online, perhaps. Available to answer any questions that you have. So with that, I will turn it over to you for any questions.
Are there any questions this evening?
I have one, and maybe it's more just a clarification. But that first sentence, are you going to continue working on possible sources to reduce the subsidy? You mean to reduce the City of Bloomington's part of the subsidy, or?
Correct, yes. Yes.
Other questions? Commissioner Carter.
Thank you. So just reading through the notes, so we already approved the land write-down component. So this is approving the additional $100,000 subsidy per unit.
Correct.
And it says it's coming from the HRA's development fund. And I guess I'm just curious, because I know that the HRA finances are very complex. Do we just kind of have this money reserved for these kinds of opportunities? to leverage, or are there trade-offs here? So if we spend this 200,000 here, does that mean that we might have to make other decisions in other areas of the budget?
Yes, Chair and Commissioners. So the development fund is used for a variety of projects. One of them is development projects. We've also used that fund for things like improvements to the homes that the HRA currently owns. Right now, there is a fairly healthy fund balance. We have been using down that fund balance. However, right now there is enough in the account to leave a fairly healthy balance, and we are long-term exploring other ways to increase that balance and to use that for other investments and other projects.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Wooten?
Other than the subsidy, what is our ownership in this project?
Yes, Chair and Commissioners, so we own the site, so that's why we're able to do the land write-down, and then we would sell the property to Homes Within Reach, who would be responsible for managing the land trust aspect.
Just a little backstory on this, because I know some of you were not around when this came. This was an estate property that the city, that the HRA took over. So there's kind of the history of it, of how it became an HRA property, is it was an estate that the house had to be destroyed on the property due to the condition. So hopefully that's a little helpful backstory.
And we also do, the purchase agreement does include that it will be sold to families at that affordable level, and it aligns with the mission of Homes Within Reach, so the expectation would be that those homes would stay affordable at that range continuing forward after the first sale.
Are there any other questions? Commissioner Carter?
Thank you. I don't have any questions, but does our guest from Habitat want to speak or say anything about the project?
Thanks for the opportunity, commissioners. Yeah, my name is Noah Keller. I'm a project manager with Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity. I've presented before, and so I just echo what you've said. And so I'm just basically here to answer any questions if there are any like design items that people had questions about or anything else that I can help share. Very excited to be here. Very excited for the opportunity.
Yeah, wonderful. Any other questions? I do have one question, and that would just be when I'm going to make this. Do we have a resolution number? I apologize.
Yeah, I think it can be
20?
20.
Okay. Thank you.
I am going to unmute Brenda to see if you're
Sure.
hearing. Brenda, you may speak if you have anything you want to share.
She was attending another, a council meeting tonight for another project, so she may not be available to comment, but yeah.
Hi, this is Brenda Lama-Wolke, Executive Director of Homes Within Reach. I'm in my car, so driving to the other meeting, but we're very excited to do this project. It's been years in the making. We were approached by the city to really try to do something there. Our original proposal was just a single family home, perhaps a twin home, and seeing that we could take this project and turn it into basically 4 units of affordable home ownership is quite an undertaking, but it's one that we're glad we have the opportunity to bring a new form of home ownership to the city is really quite an honor that we've been asked to do this. So we're very excited with the project.
Wonderful, thank you. Are there any other questions this evening on this item? Hearing no other questions, we'd be looking for a motion to approve Resolution 2024-20, approving a development agreement and purchase agreement regarding property located at 9030 and 9036 Park Avenue South in the city of Bloomington. We have a motion by Commissioner Doblinger and a second by Commissioner Wooten to approve Resolution 2024-20, approving a development agreement and purchase agreement regarding property located at 9030 and 9036 Park Avenue South in the city of Bloomington. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Wonderful. Moving on to new business, item 5.1 is new payment standards for housing choice vouchers, Section 8 rent assistance program. May we have the staff report?
Good evening, Chair and Council members. Every year in October, HUD sets the fair market rents, or the FMR is what we call it at our office. And then also that gives us the kind of threshold for what our payment standards are, and that's based on really budgetary stuff. So we really look at both what HUD's doing when they increase the FMRs and what it will do to our budget. If you notice in the white, that is the with the blue is what is HUD proposed, and then we cannot go below 90%, but we cannot exceed 110% of that FMR. The dark green is our current payment standards, and our kind of yellowish color is our proposed payment standards. And you'll notice that our 1s and 2s and 0 bedrooms stayed the same, and our 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6 went up, mainly due to the 90%, but then adjusted a little bit for the 3 bedrooms. The reason why we looked at this, if you were to look at last year's FMR, HUD increased their payment standards 15%, which is really big. So then that was what we increased our 1s and our 2s, which is where most of our families reside, which will have a huge impact on our average HAP and our budget. So we went with HUD's kind of go and increase those, and we, with our budget, fared well. This year, they only increased it 4%. So we didn't want to touch our 1s and 2s because we raised them $200, which I've worked here for 25 years. I don't think we've ever done that. So that was really exciting to give some relief to those bedroom sizes. But until we get our budget, we really don't want to touch those at this time. So we don't know when those budgets come out because they should be coming out on time, but Congress, they don't always have the resolution. So I'm here tonight to get those approved. If you have any questions on that issue, I'd be happy to ask.
Wonderful, thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, we'd be looking to approve the proposed payment standards for the Housing Choice Voucher Section 8 Rent Assistance Program effective for October 1st, 2023. Is that correct?
2020 or 24.
24, sorry.
Yep, no, it's okay. It's effective in 24 and then
So
goes to
24, I apologize. So
No, it's
let me
okay.
reread that. We'd be looking for a motion to approve the proposed payment standards for the Housing Choice Voucher Section 8 Rent Assistance Program effective for October 1st, 2024. We have a motion by Commissioner Wooten
Second.
and a second by Commissioner Mueller to approve the proposed payment standards for the Housing Choice Voucher Section 8 Rent Assistance Program effective for October 1st, 2024. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you
you.
very much. Moving on to item 5.2, it will be another public hearing, but it's also in the approval of the 2025 Housing Choice Voucher Section 8 5-year annual and administrative plans. May we have the staff report first, please?
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Before you tonight is an annual item, so every year we do come before this body with our annual plan and our administrative plan for the Housing Choice Voucher Program, which we are required to submit to HUD. This year we also have the 5-year agency plan because we are, 2024 is the end of a 5-year cycle. So the 5-year agency plan would be for 2025 through 2029. A quick overview, just for review regarding the Housing Choice Voucher Program. So this is a federal rental assistance program. Our funding, as Robin just alluded to, is appropriated by Congress, and we are we get a certain portion directly from HUD. We administer this program, and we have signed agreements with both participants of the program and the property owners that we work with through the program, and then the tenants also have separate agreements with the owner through a lease agreement. So those are kind of the 3 governing documents related to the program. Currently, we're administering 683 vouchers, and that includes 168 port-in vouchers. So those are vouchers we administer on behalf of other housing authorities. We also do have 38 project-based voucher units, and we have 78 port-out vouchers. So those are vouchers from Bloomington, but those residents currently live in other places, and those housing authorities are administering those vouchers on behalf of our office. So because we are at the end of a 5-year cycle, I did want to just highlight some of the key milestones that occurred over the last 5 years, one of which is approval of 8 new project-based vouchers in the 700 American development. And that project is or should be starting construction any day now, so that's very exciting. We also adopted 3 new voucher types as part of our program in the last 5 years, and that's the FYI, or Foster Youth to Independence vouchers, VASH, or Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing vouchers, and also HCV homeownership vouchers. We completed a pretty extensive review and revision of our administrative policies regarding this program, which also led to a waiting list opening earlier this year. So a lot of major changes to the program over this period and key milestones as well. So I just want to quickly highlight the 6 goals that we have identified for our 5-year agency plan. The broad theme here is building on the work of the last 5 years, and also recognizing that HUD has made some pretty substantial changes to the program that we are going to be implementing over the next few years. So keeping that in mind in terms of staff capacity to be rolling out a bunch of new programs on top of implementing changes to the program at the same time. So the 6 are listed there for your review. And just placing a high focus on operational efficiency, expanding housing opportunities, and maintaining the physical quality of the housing. Like I just mentioned, HUD continues to implement substantial updates to the program, which are taking significant staff time going towards implementing these. So Inspire, which is one I know we've talked about as a group here, that implementation deadline was actually extended through October of 2025. And so that is a big component of what we will be working on over the next year. And then also HUD pushed back the implementation deadline for parts of the Housing Opportunity Through Modernization Act, also known as HOTMA, specifically around how income and assets are calculated under the program. And so we haven't received a new implementation deadline yet, but that would be something that we anticipate would result in updates to our administrative plan. So you may see amendments coming in the next year as well. So just a quick review too of the difference between the annual plan and the administrative plan. The annual plan, first and foremost, kind of serves as a summary of what we've accomplished out of the 5-year plan. So it's like a progress report, but also provides high-level summaries of the HRA's policies and programs and operations towards meeting local housing needs. Another component of the annual agency plan is the Resident Advisory Board process, or RAB. And so we are required to form a reasonable representative group of program participants to provide guidance and feedback. And so this is part of the annual process as we prepare this plan. And the way that the RAB process has typically worked out over the last few years is we do solicit feedback from the entire program participant body, because we do not have an active tenant council in Bloomington. The administrative plan, on the other hand, is much more detailed regarding local policies and procedures. While most of the program is prescribed by HUD, there are some areas where we do have flexibility locally, and that's really the place where you'll find that local flexibility. And compared to last year's plan, there's not significant changes to the admin plan other than things that we were required to update and implement because of HOTMA. A notice was published and a 45-day comment period was held for both the agency plans and the administrative plan, and noticing of the comment period was also sent to all of the HCV program participants through the RAB process. No comments have been received at this time. And that ends my presentation. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Wooten?
So the RAB process, does that by any way include the 42 properties that we're actually taking back on for control of?
Thank you, Commissioner Wooten. So 20 of the units are project-based vouchers, so they are included in that RAB outreach process as program participants. The other 21 units, those are not covered under the HCV program, so those were not solicited for under the RAB process specifically.
So follow up to that, you mentioned that the email went out to folks. Have there been any responses?
Thank you, Commissioner Wooten. At this time, we have not received any feedback regarding the plans.
Is there a time frame?
So, thank you, Commissioner Wooten. The way that the RAB process is we essentially currently are communicating that the public comment period is open and providing information for where they can find the plans and general information about what the plans are and how it impacts their participation on the program.
I'm sorry, but I'm asking these questions in part because we're making these major investment infrastructure improvements, and I'm really curious as to what's going to be our plan of action going forward in relationship to really interconnecting with those families to ensure that they understand and truly grasp, the investments that are being made on their behalf, and more importantly than that, how we're actively going to be, hopefully, helping them evolve to a point of home ownership. And so I'm very curious as to going forward what our plan of action is going to be around really engaging those families beyond just managing their properties.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Wooten. I will say one of the major efforts that we did put in this year is building out our staff capacity around the properties that we own and manage to allow for greater kind of one-on-one interaction with our tenants, specifically for the Rental Homes for Future Home Buyers program. So separating out the property management components from the programmatic allows us to really kind of dig in a little deeper with our households and provide more one-on-one coaching as appropriate.
Commissioner Wooten?
So are we looking at developing a program specifically around that interaction?
Thank you, Commissioner Wooten. So we currently do have a program for the Rental Homes for Future Home Buyers. They meet annually with a staff member of the HRA, and they're also connected to other resources like the Journey to Homeownership courses that we offer here at the city and Home Stretch and other home buyer readiness programming.
I'm not sure if this is appropriate, but I'm going to ask that there be some reporting throughout this next year to the commissioners on the process involving those families.
Thanks, Commissioner Wooten. Yes, that is definitely something we can come back to this body with.
Are there any other questions before we open this for a public hearing? Seeing no other questions, we'd be looking for a motion to open the public hearing to solicit comments on the 2025 Housing Choice Voucher Section 8 5-year annual and administrative plans. We have a motion by Commissioner Wooten, second by Commissioner Issei to open the public hearing. If there's anybody here to speak on item 5.2, it is now open for public comment. Seeing no one come forward, is there anyone on the phone? Seeing no one come forward and having no one on the phone line, we'd be now looking to close and looking for a motion to close the public hearing to solicit comments on the 2025 Housing Choice Voucher Section 8 5-year annual and administrative plans.
Move to close.
We have a motion by Commissioner Wooten.
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Mueller to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Now we'd be looking for a motion to approve the 2025 Housing Choice Voucher Section 8 5-year annual and administrative plans for submission to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Move to approve.
We have a motion by Commissioner Wooten and a second by Commissioner Mua to approve the 2025 Housing Choice Voucher Section 8 5-year annual and administrative plans for submission to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Moving on now to discussion item 6.1, Opportunity Housing Ordinance Report. May we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. So this is our Opportunity Housing Ordinance Annual Report, which is a required report of the ordinance. So the within the ordinance language is a requirement that a report be given to the City Council before October 1st of each year, and interested bodies can receive that report as well. So this report was given to the City Council on September 9th. But as the HRA is deep into the work of affordable housing, we thought we'd bring it here tonight. So we'll go through the annual updates. We'll go through some upcoming projects related to the Opportunity Housing Ordinance, and then I'll rapidly go through some of the development updates that have taken place over the last year. So we always like to ground in what the rent and income limits are for this program. They're set by HUD. They're set at the federal level. And from 2023 to 24, they actually didn't change. So that was new. The amounts didn't change for households earning less than 80% of the area median income. Our affordability requirements kick in at 60% AMI. So all of those rents that you see for 60% AMI and lower are the same as the last year. And that's based, of course, off of households paying no more than 30% of their monthly income on housing. That's what we consider affordable. So that said, these are affordable rents, but they're still quite high. So like a 2-bed you see at the 60% AMI level, that's still almost $1,700 a month. So for our Opportunity Housing Ordinance, there are two kind of main categories of benefits that developers can get by complying with our ordinance and then going further and beyond in providing additional affordable units and units affordable at a deeper level. So I show this table just to for that side of the development standard flexibilities, which is things that are required by our zoning code. Developers can get some looser restrictions there. You can see every single development that's come through since this ordinance has been in place have taken the parking stall reduction. So that's very popular. It will continue to be popular. There's also a high utilization of tax increment financing, which is one of the financial subsidy categories of the OHO. And then all the way on the right side, I wanted to point out what Anna mentioned, which is the utilization of project-based vouchers. So we do actually call that out in our OHO as one of the benefits that projects can receive if they offer that deeper affordability. And that project is the 700 American Boulevard development. So we partnered with them to get those vouchers in place. So this is our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The trust fund was established with the same ordinance as the Opportunity Housing Ordinance, so it's Chapter 9 in our Code of Ordinances if you want to go take a look, but that's been in place since 2019. It was initially funded with almost a $15 million loan from Old National Bank, and we were able to use that funding to support these 5 development projects. So as of 700 American, which we mentioned is about to break ground, we will have fully utilized that initial $15 million. And we were able to achieve some great accomplishments with that money in terms of getting deeper affordability. I think 700 American is great to highlight. They had initially proposed a 60% AMI low-income housing tax credit project, and through our subsidy, through the project-based vouchers, and partnering with them to get local funding sources, they brought that down to 50% AMI. So they used what's called income averaging, which means across those units of those affordable units, the average rent is affordable for 50% AMI or lower. We also embarked on our first compliance process for the Opportunity Housing Ordinance over the last year, and it was successful. We reached out directly to property managers of all of the developments that have units which were required under the Opportunity Housing Ordinance. The main takeaways to report are that it's kind of a mixed bag of compliance. So a lot of the new projects have been very successful in their compliance, and that's come through a lot of staff time and technical assistance that was provided to get them established. Some of the older projects, so thinking of projects that were built at the beginning of the ordinance, and those projects that have more mixed income, so they're not completely affordable, those were projects where we identified some non-compliance. In one case, we did require back pay to residents who were paying more than they should have under our ordinance. So now we're back into compliance with that development, and we are exploring ways to ensure when we're looking at compliance, we're catching all of those things. Looking forward, one of the considerations to make would be exploring working with an external partner to conduct compliance. The benefit there is we'd be getting a uniform compliance process across all of the developments instead of it being kind of a property manager by property manager basis of whether or not there's full compliance with our requirements. So that's something that we are examining. The other thing that we're working on examining is the Housing Nexus study. So we mentioned this is coming. The study that was conducted to establish the basis of the ordinance back in 2019 is reaching the end of its relevant lifespan. So it's not as relevant to the economic conditions that we're currently in. So our plan is to go out for RFP in October in this month to partner with a consultant to conduct this study. We were able to secure $45,000 from the Met Counsel to support this study, and it's expected that the results of the study will inform updates to the OHO, which of course would come to this body for recommending approval to the City Council, just as we did late last year with our amendment process. So the things that we specifically want to examine are whether or not that base requirement of 9% of units at 60% AMI is still relevant, both to the economic conditions and also to the goals of the city and the HRA. Finally, another upcoming item is kind of a slew of additional analyses, so I'll just leave that for you to take a look at. And can talk to any of these items in detail if you'd like. And the last thing I want to report on is our Met Council goals. So the Metropolitan Council allocates housing need to each of the municipalities within the Met Council region. And so Bloomington has been allocated a percentage of, or not a percentage, but a specific unit count of the housing units that will be needed by 2030, and this is starting in 2021. So we've actually done quite well on building housing units affordable to households earning 60% AMI or less, with 700 American breaking ground soon. If that project gets to its completion, we'll have achieved our goal for 50% AMI, but we have a long, long way to go for 30% AMI. So that's something that we will need to work hard on, and it does kind of highlight a challenge, which is that we have expended that loan, that $15 million loan, which was our main tool to subsidize the construction of those affordable units. So you can see of those developments that have included 30% AMI units, those all received loans from our trust fund. So that's going to be a challenge to overcome, is to find a new source for that program. So now I'll quickly run through just those projects that wrapped up this year or are in consideration. So we saw the completion of Carbon 31 and Riser, as well as Noble Apartments in Oxborough Heights. So that was a busy year of completions. Under construction, we still have quite a few projects. 6701 West 78th Street is the Enclave development over toward the west side of Bloomington. We also saw 1801 American Boulevard West is making a lot of progress, and then the Ardor will soon be completed. I believe this fall is still their completion target. But that is a market rate project, so they paid their fee in lieu of building affordable units, and we would see that that's the fee in lieu that must be, a subsequent project must be, it must have received final development approval by next year. So we'll be watching for that. And then this is 700 American, so this was approved, and hopefully in the next week or so we can update that status to under construction. So thank you, and I can take any questions on any of the content.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Commissioner Mua.
Thank you, Chair. Couple questions. I'm wondering about the parking incentive. Have we had any issues or complaints from neighbors regarding the reduced parking incentive?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Moa. We have had one.
Okay.
So there was one project in particular that received the maximum parking stall reduction, which isn't common. Most of the projects are receiving a smaller amount. There's a range of reductions that are available through the OHO, and it's based off of what sort of transit area you're in. So that project was in one of the highest qualified transit areas, and as a result received the maximum reduction. There were some issues with guests to the apartment not being able to access parking units within the perimeters of the development, and we're having to park on street, which, as we know, is can be a challenge in Bloomington. So that was one where we did receive some complaints. I think we liaisoned with that property manager to try and come up with a solution. I haven't heard of any complaints since then. That was last year. So besides that one project, I have heard no complaints.
Awesome. And then my second question is about the loans we have, right? The idea was that we'd have $15 million, we'd be able to loan these out and then get the repayment back. What is the repayment period where we start seeing money come back to be able to use towards other projects? Do we have an idea?
Council, Commissioner Moa, it's a great question, and it's also part of our best intentions on this work is to get that repayment in and reprogram it with a kind of a revolving loan approach. As projects have been in place, what we've found is the cash flow for some of those projects hasn't met the expectations that were set in the original development process. And as a result, we're getting lower payments, and that means we can't fully make the payment on that loan that we took out with Old National Bank for the $15 million. So what was part of that original deal was the backstop out of the HRA levy. So you're probably familiar with that $500,000 that gets set aside within the HRA levy for repayment of that original loan. So as a result, we're projecting we'll need all of this funding to make sure that we're making those payments. When we get further down the road, that would be the point where we could reassess how much of this repayment can be reprogrammed. And I think that earliest date is still quite a ways out, like many years out. So in terms of this repayment coming in and being reprogrammed to other projects, that's not a short-term opportunity, unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Wooten.
Is there any fear of any defaults?
Chair, Commissioners, no, there's no fear of default. And we have a great finance team that is making sure that that doesn't take place. So apologies if I portrayed that in any way.
Okay, thanks.
I do have one question regarding Blooming Meadows. If I remember correctly, with that property, there was the new property, but then there's the older property, and part of that was to refurbish units within that older property. Where is that sitting? Because I know there was some pushback, there was some issues, and I just want to know clearly, kind of, have those have those units been refurbished and back up to code now, or where are we sitting? Because I just don't feel like we ever got that resolution on that.
Chair, Commissioners, so that project did take place, and 306 units were they received substantial rehabilitation. So I wasn't around for the specifics of that, so I don't know more detail than to say that project was completed, but I'm sure we could get more information on where that is now. I'm not aware of any code compliance issues that exist currently, so I would imagine that those were remediated when that rehabilitation took place. But it did happen.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you. I just knew we didn't get the complete follow-up because I think that's when things were turning over and things were switching. So I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure those had gone back up to compliance because that was an issue and a concern that the board had at the time. So other than that, are there any other questions on this item? Thank you so much for this update. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
With that, we'd be looking to adjourning the meeting. So we'd be looking for a motion to adjourn the Tuesday, October 8th, 2020. What? Sorry? Oh, sorry. We have a couple quick updates by Administrator Abe. I apologize.
No worries. Just a couple of quick notes. So one is that we will likely have an upcoming agenda item on the Heights, which I'm sure you're all familiar with that situation. And so we have a meeting with residents tomorrow. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask me about that. If one or two commissioners would like to attend, we're open to that as well. And then the other just quick update is that we do have another assistant administrator position that has been posted, and we're hoping to fill in the next couple of months here. That's it.
All right. Thank you. Is there any questions on those items? 5:30. With no other questions, we would now be looking for a motion to adjourn the Tuesday, October 8th, 2024 Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting. We have a motion by Commissioner Isay.
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Mueller to adjourn the meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Meeting is adjourned.